Hello, doctor, and welcome to today's program. Today what I want to talk about is I teach doctors all over the country how to be better injury doctors. And a lot of doctors have a lot of questions on attorneys and the lack of understanding of attorneys in the injury market. One of the things that comes up is, like recently, I'll give you tell you a little bit of a story. Recently, one of the doctors in a group that I consult with on a monthly basis came to me and said, Dr. Kronk, the attorneys that I go to don't want impairments. They don't want impairment ratings. They don't want impairments. They don't want those listed in the documentation. And, I'm frustrated. How do I handle that? And I thought to myself, oh, wow, that's the easiest thing in the world to handle. But the first thing that you need to check, especially when somebody's coming up against you and doesn't want something that you think that they should want, is you got to check to see what they understand the condition to be, what they understand an impairment to be. So in this case, I asked the doctor, what is an impairment? And the interesting thing is he couldn't answer it right away. Now that's the problem that he has. That was the problem that he had. And that's the problem that he'll have with the attorneys, is if you're trying to take something out that you don't understand and you're trying to take it out and explain it and educate on it, you're going to run into the questions or the things that you yourself do not understand. So it was really simple. I said, Doctor, what is an impairment? And he gave me a little bit of a lag. So I said, okay, let's go right to the 5th edition impairment guides and go loss of use of, or derangement of any body part, organ, or organ system. So loss is a loss of, if you lose your limb, that's a loss. All right, so that's what loss is. Now, how do you lose your limb? Well, it's got to be injured. You got to damage it. Loss of use of. All right, if I cut the nerve due to an injury and I can't use my arm, I've lost the use of. Now, how did I cut the nerve in the first place? It's an injury. Or a derangement. Derangement is just exactly what it is. It's a misaligned part. All right, so if I sever the cord, I've misaligned the cord. I've separated the part. If I fracture something, I've misaligned it. If I herniate a disc, I've misaligned it. If I cause excessive motion, I've misaligned it. If I damage the heart, I've misaligned it. There's not one injury in the world that's not a derangement. All injuries are derangements, so all injuries inherently are impairments. Now, some have no impairment. In other words, what I mean by impairment is there's a thing called an impairment rating. So an impairment rating would be something that meets a criteria established by the AMA that now triggers that rating. And remember, an impairment rating is nothing more than how does this injury affect the person's life? How does it affect their activities of daily living? Or a thing called duties under duress, things that the patient can do, but they do it under duress. Or loss of enjoyment of life, things that the injury has caused the patient no longer to be able to do. So, if you understand that all impairments are injuries, if an attorney says that they don't want any impairments listed, essentially what they've just said to you will not make any sense, and you can clear it right away with the attorney, is they've just said to you, we don't want any injuries listed. And if they say we don't want an impairment rating, what they're saying is we don't want you to have an objective, consensus-driven position on how the injury this patient's injury has negatively influenced their life. So if an attorney says to me, well, look, we don't like impairments listed. I say, you don't like injuries listed? An impairment is an injury. You can't have an impairment without an injury. So an impairment is an injury, and an impairment is a published document. Impairment guides are a published document that says what the whole world understands the negative impact to the person's life is going to be for this injury. So if you say you don't want an impairment listed or you don't want impairment ratings listed, essentially what you're saying is that you don't want the injury listed, you don't want it identified, you don't want it objectified, and then you don't want it to be known the negative effect that it had on the patient's life. Now, if you don't know the injury and you don't know the negative impact it's had on its life, on the patient's life, how can you do your job in representing to whoever you're representing these injuries to, an insurer, an employer, whoever you're representing these injuries to, how can you do your job in getting the client access to any benefits they may be entitled to if I don't actually document the injury and the negative effect it's had on the person's life. Now, is the attorney actually is he gonna argue that he doesn't want those things or she doesn't want those things? No. They just don't understand them. It's just flat out they don't understand it, and in my experience, most doctors don't understand it. Right? So you have impairment, that's an injury, that's a derangement of a body part. That causes now some negative effect in the person's life. That's an impairment, that's all it is. A disability is how that injury, that derangement, that impairment affects their ability to earn a living. That's what disability is. The terms get washed out with some definitions because the people who are redefining terms didn't understand what the original terms meant in the first place. So you as a doctor have to understand the simplicity of these terms. And they're very, very simple to understand. Impairment, loss of use of, or derangement of any part, body part, organ, or organ system. What's an organ? Does it have to be a heart? Well, that is an organ. Is a valve in the heart an organ? Yes. All right. Is a finger an organ? Yes. All right. Any body part is an organ. An organ is a body part that's part of an organ system. So any part in an organ system is an organ. So it's very, very simple, but you have to understand the terms. And the more you understand the terms, the easier it is to explain these things, the easier it is to educate, and the freer you're going to be on your ability to handle immediately. Now remember, here's the thing, doctors. Why is this so important? This doctor's in front of 20 attorneys. And he's in front of 20 attorneys who may want to do business with him. So the more that you handle those 20 attorneys, and the more you handle it seamlessly and instantly, because you understand your subject matter, the more that they're going to like what they see, and the more that they're going to trust and have confidence in you that you are the referral source. So in my world, I am creating smart injury doctors, and those smart injury doctors are the top 10%. They're at the front of the bell curve. They're in every city where an injured patient would want to go. If you out there are an attorney, or you're a medical doctor, or you're somebody listening to this podcast, my doctors that I'm creating, called the Smart Injury Doctors, are doctors that if you had a loved one that had this type of injury, they're exactly where you'd want to go. These are doctors that are accelerating their understanding of these injuries and continuously educating themselves to improve themselves in the market. So today, what I just wanted to talk about was the simple question of what do you do when attorneys don't want impairments or impairment ratings listed? Now, I hope that's helped you in some way, doctors. Again, these podcasts that I do, these programs that I do are short, sweet, and to the point on a topic. Tune in. You can listen to them on your way to work. You can listen to them on your Echo Plus. Tune into the podcasts. Listen to them as you work out, because each is a short topic. Now, I also pay attention to what your comments are. So if you have comments down below on this program, hit me with the comments. Tell me what your struggle with is in the injury market. Because if you're an excellent doctor, you should have no struggle in the injury market. You should be actually loaded with injury patients and injury referrals. So down below, give me the two biggest reasons why, or the two biggest struggles that you have in building your injury practice. Doctors, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Thank you.